Did it show up?
Yep.
Okay. All right. All right.
Hello.
Well, hi, Carrie. It's good to see you. And I know you're coming in from a bunch of wild stuff.
Oh yeah.
Thanks for giving me the heads up that this has been a day. Yeah, before we get started, and talk, kind of dig in, is there anything you want to, talk about, or just sort of any 911s or anything you want to talk about?
Yeah, I think I will just tell you, like yesterday was a really hard day. I was in our Glendale office and just people are so negative about our HR person being laid off and, how she handled it didn't help us and all of that. And so, it was 5 o'clock and I'm sitting with my number two and we're sitting at his table and just kind of talking about like how all consuming this job is and how our management team feels like our management team is like not on the same page and not like, I kind of got to this place of, I don't feel like they have our back. Like they're just falling into the masses. Right. And so there was just, and I just looked at Russell and I said, there's only two of us. We can't fix this. Like if they're not with us, then we're in trouble. Like and so, just kind of talking through that. Now we did engage the consultant and I met with them yesterday afternoon. So that process is going to start. And I think that process is going to help us.
Yeah.
Because the management team is going to kind of co-create our new culture. But, we've got some time. It's not going to be till the end of March till we meet the first time. They're going to do a lot of investigation over the next month or 2 months, really. So I was just like in this place last night driving home, just going, why am I even doing this? Like, why am I doing this? They could totally just bring in somebody from the outside. They can do whatever they want with all these people. They can just trash the place. They can do whatever. I don't really care at this point. I'm trying to save this and there's no credit for that. Right. So Russell and I were both just kind of commiserating about that. And I just had this realization, like I've been at my friend's house, last couple of weekends, and I went to the Huntington last weekend with them. And I'm just not really enjoying anything personally. Like I'm sitting there going, I just want to go home and sit on my couch. Right. And so I was processing all that going, oh, it's this, like, and I've got to find a way to get out of this. So, boy, this morning I was like, all right, God, if you're going to answer any prayer at all, I just need like a glimmer of hope today. I just need a glimmer of hope. And so I had a scheduled meeting at 10 o'clock with one of our more challenging branch managers. And I was just like, no. It actually turned out to be really inspiring, really hopeful. He had great ideas. He said he was inspired because we talked about vision last time. And I kind of shared the vision with him a little bit. And he was inspired by that and said, all of our branch managers need to hear this and be inspired like I'm inspired by what you're saying. And I walked out of there and went, holy cow. Like, there was hope from a person, the most unlikely place. And B, I think he really had a good understanding of some things that need to happen for us to get that group that he represents on track. Different management group we still need to deal with, right? So that's like the 911 screaming in my head right now going, I need to pay attention to that.
Yeah. Yeah. That gives me chills, honestly. I mean, that's, yeah. So can I ask just a couple, would you rather focus on that today or would you rather go back to the other stuff? Because we can do
focusing on that would probably be great.
Yeah.
I think it ties into the whole vision conversation.
It sure does. It sure does. And I mean, there have been situations where I've seen people share, like almost test it in a warm situation. So that's interesting. So did you share sort of what you had just talked to me about? 1, 2, 3, 4, boom, 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 or what about it do you think was inspiring? Because that's exciting to hear back from.
So he was like, you know, when I talked to Scott, prior owner, he said I had this like 5-year plan and this and that, which what I think is interesting. Caveat, that 5-year plan was never shared with me, and I was the director of escrow operations, right? Like, this is the first time I'm hearing your 5-year plan. But everybody thinks he's God. Anyway, my little sour grapes. So he, you know, he shared with me kind of his plan and what he wants to do. And I said, I don't see any reason why we can't still do that. Like, that's really great. And I support this and I want to partner with you. And he's like, my word for this year is restore. He said, last year, it's like we were mourning everything. And he goes, this year, I want to go back to what I know, back to what I'm doing. And I said, that's really amazing. I said, let me tell you the conversations that I've had over the past couple of weeks. I said, there's these recurring themes that keep coming up. So I was in my therapist's office last week, and I was just talking about kind of myself personally and how I'm really working on asking for what I need and not being ashamed of wanting specific things and whatever, right? Like, I usually am not allowed to want something. Like, I asked to have somebody else's desk who quit, and I was like feeling like, should I have even asked for that? And it's like, yeah, you should have. But you know, that's like a microcosm of it. But anyway, when I was talking to my therapist, he goes, it feels like you're giving birth, like you're giving birth to something. And I said, yeah, I feel like I'm giving birth to a new iteration of me. And I kind of have to in this role, right? And so yesterday with these consultants that I was meeting with, and as we're talking about what we're going to do, they referred to it as giving birth to a new culture that the management team is co-creating together. I was like, huh. And then he was talking about restoring, but he was talking about doing something new. And so I was saying to him, you want to birth something new in your career, and I want to help you birth it. And here's where I'm at in that process, right? And so I think he resonated with that. And that's part of what inspired him. And I also said, look, we're level setting this year. I said, if people don't want to be here, we don't want to make them be here. And so he's very close to the really toxic person that left us in the summer. And I said, Marcine didn't want to be here, and it's okay that she's not. And he's like, yeah. And he said she could suck all the air out of the room, you know, like our first branch manager call with her gum was kind of a relief. So he could see some of that, right? So it sort of just validated some things. And so we talked about like his whole career, but then I said, is there anything else you want to talk about? And he says, he goes, I have a suggestion for branch managers. I said, okay, let's hear it. And he said, I really think that you need to get all the branch managers together live in a room. He goes, and you need to share this vision. He goes, I was really inspired, and they need to be inspired too. And I was like, wow. Okay. So, you know, and then we talked about various other things that, you know, we've been struggling with branch manager calls, and I got his input and all these different things. And it's the first like non-defensive conversation I've ever had with this man in 5 years. Like, usually he has got all of these defenses up and you just can't penetrate. And for whatever reason today, he chose to let them down just a little, and we were able to connect. And so I was like, hey, he goes, I'm the person who's going to reach out and have this conversation with you. He goes, but other people aren't. And I said, well, funny you should say that. I said, I've met with 2 other branch managers in the last month or so. And I said, you know, I learned about their careers, and they both said when they walked away, I'm so glad I did this. This was so great. So I walk out of that going, you know, with a couple of takeaways. First of all, again, it is up to me to cast the vision, even if I'm not clear 100% on the vision right now, as it is, right? And number 2, not everybody's going to like me. There are some that are still not going to like me, but it is my job to connect with them, learn with them, and make the attempt at least, right? To kind of just pierce the armor, whatever that is. Because I might just be surprised like today,
Mhm.
you
Mhm.
know, and
Yeah.
they need to feel like they're part of what we're doing. And I sit there just going, I just want you to go away, just stop talking, right? Only with two other ones, only with two other ones. So it was just a really interesting, like clarifying kind of conversation for me. And it gave me hope that all is not lost. I don't need to quit. I can do this. And also, we've spent the last 5 months just in a mud pit, and it's time to climb out and claim it. Just claim the territory. Just, this is where we're going. This is
Yeah.
what we're doing. If you don't like it, that's okay.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot in that. And I, first of all, um, I'm glad that was very, affirming for you, but let's go back to how things were this morning.
Yeah, before that. Yeah.
Because I think it's important to acknowledge that. And also, I mean, what I heard, or tell me just, I mean, I hear, overwhelmed, exhaustion, but almost like with this management team, I- how does that make you feel? Like how they're almost ghosting you? I mean,
It feels like a betrayal to a certain extent. And that might be over emotionalizing it or whatever, but um, it 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 just, and there are a couple of people with whom it feels like that.
Mhm.
People who directly reported to me and don't now. And they take issue with anything Russell says or does, like they're just really fighting, right?
Mhm.
And then these other people, we call them old guard. So the OG people who were very close to the HR person who's leaving, well, they were in this protected prison class, right? Where, Scott never, he made them feel like he was doing all these things for them, but really he put them in a cell. He
Mhm.
locked them in a cell to serve his own purposes. They don't see it that way. There's parts of that they see, but we took a person out of her cell, and when we took her out of her cell, she couldn't survive. So, so those people I feel like they're just questioning everything we do and say.
Mhm.
And I want an open dialogue. So I don't want to quash that. This is a great question. How do you have open dialogue, but just be like, okay, I've heard you, but you're dead wrong.
Yeah.
Or like, I can't tell you the whole story. It's not my story to tell. You need to
Yeah.
let it go and trust. What I want is for them to trust that we are working for the best interest of our people. And they don't trust that when they see things like this happen.
Yeah. Yeah. That's, yes. I mean, I hear you. I hear lots in there. I'm stepping into the consultant for a minute. I mean, you're inheriting it's misplaced distrust is
Yeah.
the problem. I mean,
Yeah.
that is like, and it's hard. It's so freaking hard.
Yeah.
Um, so what, what have you thought about, or, I mean, there is an element of trying to figure out what you can do to sort of have a boundary with like how long this goes on, and or what we talk about, and tell me what that sounds like to you. Like, I mean, I hear you saying I don't want them to talk to me, but they keep talking to me. Or so what could you do to put a boundary up, and what might be preventing that?
You know, that's a really good question because I don't know what kind of a boundary is appropriate, I guess.
Yeah.
Um, and so I'm really curious and a little nervous about all the things that are going to be said to these consultants that are going to have these one-on-ones with all these people, right?
Mhm.
Um, and I guess my fear is it's going to be Carrie and Russell don't know what they're doing, or Carrie doesn't know what she's doing, or Carrie doesn't know or she's taken the company, or we don't agree with what Kara's doing, right? In the end, I'm the person leading the company, whether they want to agree with it or not. What I don't understand is why they are so free to tell me what I'm doing wrong when they never would have done that with Jeff or Scott.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and is it me or is it them or is it a combination?
Yeah.
It's probably a combination. Of course, things always are, but like, I don't know. Like, I want them to feel like they can come to me and share their opinion, but I also, it's like with Mike at some point, and we kept trying to say this, but he wouldn't let it go. At some point, you know, we're like, we can't tell you the whole story. You just have to trust us. That that she made her own bed, right? Like things are not what they seem, and he wouldn't let it go. And so I guess maybe sometimes you have to say, we're not getting anywhere in this conversation, so we're going to end it. But I hate to go there with people because then it just, you know, makes them not want to talk to you at all.
Right. Yeah. So I heard a couple things in that. Number one, I think, well, I heard you say something about navigating this through the lens of what they're going to say about you in the interviews.
Yep.
You want to tell me a little bit more about that?
Well, so I still have PTSD from Jill's class and the 360 thing. Yeah. I really do. Yeah. So this coming on the heels of then yet another person who was removed by First American, even though one was 5 months ago and one is today, it feels like yesterday, right? Like I know I have to have thick skin, but there's a point at which it's just like, give me a break, guys. Yeah. Like, would you like to be in this role? And it would have been a whole lot easier to walk away. And maybe I have to have that conversation with the team, right? To say, I need you to have my back. Tell me why you can't have my back.
So let's pull on that in a minute, because I'm very curious about thinking through something like that, because it's, you know, consultant hat again, but for them to be this like this, I mean, there probably needs to be a little bit of a reckoning, and them to see you in a different light, appropriately so, not like an asshole, but you know.
Yeah.
But back to I do hear you, and I absolutely understand. I would not be wanting to open the door to opinions about my leadership when things have been misconstrued, misaligned, misjudged, the whole story isn't there. You said, do you feel like you trust this consultant to understand these kind of arcs of things?
I do. And so I do trust them to sift through all the input. It's just the input's going to be hard to hear.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you think you can share that with them? I mean, it's maybe just say, hey, I got to tell you, like, this is what happened, and it's just random 360. And I'm just, you know, I feel like I'm catching it for everyone else's mistakes.
I told her that, like, after the last meeting, I emailed her because I had to send her some information. I said, I just have to tell you, I have some PTSD related to this, and they know who Kepa is. They worked with him because they've worked within the company. So they know him. They know what an asshole he can be. And I just, you know, and I had told her, I said, look, this is what Kepa said. I'd worked for him for 2 minutes, and his comments were so negative, they like scarred me. And I had to keep reminding myself, he doesn't know me. He had no right to do that because he doesn't know me. But I said, we had this on the heels of this unfortunate situation. And so it was so negative, where every other 360 I've had has been relatively positive, you know? So I just said, I'm really concerned. And so she promised me that they would walk with me through the process, and, you know, that they were going to make it, blah, blah, blah. So yeah, I do trust them. It was interesting. They looked at my LinkedIn and saw that I have a master's from Fuller Seminary. And so, and I'd met with the woman consultant, she brought in her husband, and he said, so we see that you went to Fuller Seminary, and I understand their theology. And I just want you to know we come from some of the same places. And that's all I'm going to say about that. I was like, okay. So
Interesting.
yeah, I think he was trying to say we're Christians or something. And I was sort of like,
You have a
well,
little bit of compassion.
yeah, right. So I do trust them. I trust that they will handle it with a lot of TLC. I do. And I know it is necessary to get through this.
Yeah.
I am just dreading the process of the input, just dreading it. And I don't want to be there. I want to have a more open stance toward it. So I have to work on that.
Yeah. But to be fair, that's not easy. I mean,
No.
I mean, gives me a pit in my stomach, and I'm not you. So
Yeah.
yeah, there's that component of like, even it's not just, so it's not even that it's negative, it's not just.
Yeah.
And I know that's important to you as well. Like, hey,
Yeah.
like I'll take it if it's fair.
Yeah. But a lot of this just isn't fair. And it's founded in, this legacy culture that we have. And that's
Yeah.
why we need to give birth to a new one, right?
Right. So so the second half of that, which you jumped into, let's walk down that road a little bit of like a sort of like come to Jesus if you may, where probably with everyone, where, maybe it is, I think last time we talked about I don't know what rules of engagement, or that probably needs to not be at the beginning, but some way that you're sort of setting the tone, like about who you are, and what is going to be like, we're not peers. And
Yeah.
there's some things that I'm going to have to be involved in and we'll have a bigger story about that I can't share with you anymore. And that's hard. It's hard for me, and it's obviously hard for you. I mean, just like take this whole thing and run it all the way down the road. But I'm going to put sort of a line in the sand here, stake in the ground, whatever the right thing is. And I have to make decisions and I know that you may have some questions, but I need you to trust me. And here's why, what would that be like? Something like that.
Yeah, I think it would be interesting to see how that goes over with some people, right? And maybe that's clarifying as to whether you really want to be here.
I mean, that's what I'm thinking. You are the leader. So that's a fact that they're going to have to get, resolved.
Yeah, and going from peer to leader is a big jump when you're staying in a group like that, right? I think they feel like they have more, they're entitled to more opinions about how you do your job, right? Which on one hand, they're going to say it. So are they going to say it behind your back and not to you? I'd rather have them say it to me. But also the back channeling is, not good. Yeah, I don't know. And I'm kind of wondering, is this part of the process with the consultant that comes out, or does it need to be said sooner? That I'm not sure about.
Is this person available to you to even run that down with her?
Yeah.
I mean, what do you think about doing that?
Yeah, I could do that.
Because I mean, it can be also addressing back channeling. It can be addressing the whole thing. Like these are performance issues that we're going to be addressing. I know we're setting the culture as a team, but like these are today performance issues that I have to speak, so that basically to put them on notice, but say it in a different way than that. Like this is how we have to work together.
Yeah, somebody has to make a decision, right? And I had to make a decision. Yeah, I could have protected Judy's job, but that wasn't in the best interest of where we're going. I'm not going to say that to people, but that's the truth.
Yeah.
It was not in the best interest of where we're headed.
Right.
But I need them to trust, right? But yeah, I think I should ask her about that just to kind of see what she thinks about. Because I do think there are things surfacing that I need to pay attention to. And then there are things surfacing that are just a distraction.
That is a great sort of two columns, right? Over here, whoever this IT guy is, that's a distraction. Like, dude, just stop talking.
Please.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think that, that might be a good filter to apply in the short term. Like, is this a distraction or is this something that really needs to be dealt with?
yeah, yeah. And I would encourage you to go back around with her and just say, this is because this, I mean, that's a bunch of days, bunch of weeks.
Yeah, I got 2 months before this whole group is together with her. Yeah, which
And
is a long time.
it may be important. It may actually, I mean, I would talk to her about it, even from the standpoint of like, I don't want to feel like I'm waiting to be the leader until we work with you.
Yeah,
And because that's puts you're like a sitting duck then, sort
yeah,
of.
yeah.
Oh. So let me ask you about, and it's okay that we're going over a little bit unless you need to go just in a second. What
I have a 1:30. That's all I've got.
Okay, all right. Well, and I'll okay, so I didn't check in the middle, but are we going down the right road for you to sort of get this?
I think it's what I needed to talk about today. And it does again tie into vision and all of that. But it's also just like the hot topic that has to be, it just feels like things are coming to a head. And so I have to pay attention to that.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm gonna stop the recording because I know I can't have it too long, but I'm gonna ask you just a couple other things that off the topic. Okay, so I have just one last question to ask you.
It
So,
shows it's still recording on my
oh,
end. Is it still
sorry.
recording?